Welcome to anyone who's already live on this stream. I'm really happy to be here and hope we manage to provide you some really good tips about parenting with eczema. I'm going to invite Jennifer, who's going to be our guest today. So I'm just going to do that while we're on. But yeah, it's great to be on here live. Great if you've joined us already. If you've got any questions while we're on, then please just do put them in the chat. Oh, great. Here's Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
You can see me and hear me
yeah,
okay?
hear you fine.
Perfect.
So we've literally just started. I'm just saying thank you to everyone who's on already. And obviously people who are watching this on a recording, hi to you as well. Really hope that we managed to give you some great tips on parenting with eczema today. And if you do have questions, we'll obviously try and get to them. But if we don't get time to do that, we'll follow them up and pick them up with you afterwards. So please do put any questions in the chat. So Jennifer, I was going to just do a really quick intro on me, and then I'm going to hand over and ask you some questions. So by way of a really quick background on me, for those who don't know, the reason I run Eczema Clothing is because my daughter Bonnie had a really severe eczema as a child, as a small baby. And oh my God, I was just totally unprepared for the impact it had on us, mentally and physically, really across our whole family. And for so long, I had no idea of the extent of the sort of suffering that it would involve, both for her and for me and for the rest of our family. Fortunately, we did find a routine that worked. And in particular, we found some amazing organic cotton nightwear with integral mittens that it just was a game changer for us. So many years later, I've become involved in that company, Eczema Clothing. And to put it really simply, it helped Bonnie itch less and sleep better. So, it actually made all of us, happier as a result, because we could all sleep. Happily now at the age of 19, she's fairly clear of eczema, but I've made it my mission to help other people who are in the same situation I was, or in fact, the many adults out there that I now realize have got eczema. So here at Eczema Clothing, we've got an in-house brand, Cotton Comfort, which is our specialist eczema brand, but we also search sort of high and low across the globe to find other brands that we think would be suitable, because clothing, we think, is a really key part of the solution for people. So finally, coming on to our topic for today, eczema and mental health. So I think it is more widely recognised now that eczema can have a really significant negative effect on mental health, but it's still not recognised enough, and the support seems to be so limited that what support there is seems to be very focused on sort of medical intervention and on the physical symptoms. So I'm really delighted that Jennifer's here with us today to take a slightly more holistic view of this and talk about the sort of impact and how we might deal with issues around mental health and eczema.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, it's wonderful to have you on. So I suppose, Jennifer, to start with, it'd be great if you could just give us a little bit of background on you and tell us, how did you get into hypnotherapy and the other practices you manage, and how did it help you deal with your eczema and TSW? Because I think you've had quite a lot of personal experience of that.
Yeah, for sure. Not that I really knew what it was for a long time. So my background originally was actually in marine biology and evolution and behavior. I didn't start off, in a therapy environment at all. But when I was in such a bad place in my skin, such a low space, I was on the NHS waiting list, and my friend actually recommended hypnotherapy to me. And she was like, why don't you try this? I've got a hypnotherapist. I love her. She's great. She does it virtually. It gave me her details, and I was thinking, hypnotherapy, like what? Some sort of weird Darren Brown stuff, clucking like a chicken. Like what is this about? But at the time, I'd been off work because of my skin for a year. So I've been on medical leave for about 6 months, and then they deemed it unsafe for me to return to the work environment because I was working in a lab, and there was so many allergens around. It was just making everything so much worse. And at the time, I thought it was allergic reactions I was dealing with rather than TSW. I hadn't heard of TSW. But yeah, I eventually had a year off work, got a job in an office, and at this point, my skin was you know, manageable. It was to most people's view healed, right? Problem sorted. But the problem was that even though my flare had gone, mentally, I was still in that space. So getting up and getting dressed was a real challenge. And oh my gosh, showering. Like, because showers and baths were so painful for me for so long, I just, even though my skin was healed now, my brain still saw them as, you know, a source of a threat. And I just basically had daily panic attacks trying to get dressed and trying to shower and get to work. So ended up having hypnotherapy sessions, and I absolutely loved them. I'd gone through other types of therapy, but this one was very forward focused. Didn't have to talk about the past, because you get stuck sometimes talking about, oh yeah, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm, you're just like, I don't want to talk about it anymore, I just want to move forward. And it was just so lovely, gentle, positive. My panic attack stopped, and I realized that actually this is something that I could help people with, and I loved my hypnotherapist, and I just thought I could be that for someone. And she didn't even have any knowledge of skin conditions, so I thought, wow, if I had her skill set, you know, but also had the knowledge of what it was like firsthand to live with skin conditions, like, imagine how great that would be. You know, I could be the person that I wish I had all those years ago. Yeah,
that's great. Wow. And how do you think, I mean, skin conditions affect, you know, whether it's eczema, psoriasis, you know, others, affect sort of mental health? And I suppose in that, do you think there's a difference? I mean, or what is it that parents might struggle with most, say, when their child has eczema, as opposed to actually the child themselves?
Yeah, for sure. So it's very different for caregivers compared to the person who's actually struggling, but it's really different for both. And I think that's the thing that most people don't necessarily consider. Like, you know, I still struggle with flares. As you know, I'm just coming out of one. My immunosuppressants have kicked in now. Literally the last couple of days, I'm like, oh my God, my skin is soft. What's happening? But actually, my husband's sort of been my caregiver through this, and it's been really hard on him. So I think bringing awareness to what caregivers go through is really important. And you've got to bear in mind that caregivers, you know, they also feel helpless, right? They're kind of watching their child, who they wish they could give everything to take away all their pain. They're watching them go through this thing that they have very little control over. So you've got that feeling of helplessness, whereas the person who's suffering normally has a feeling of being a burden, right? Because you're like, I can't do anything, they're having to do everything for me. You know, some of those thoughts might even creep in that, you know, oh, they're better off without me. You know, it can get that bad. So parents can also feel like they're not doing enough, even though they're doing absolutely everything, which is enough. Sleep is a massive one for both sides. You know, people think, oh, you're itchy, you can't sleep. Sure, but actually parents, people I've spoken to, they're sleeping with their children just to hold their hands to make sure they're not itching, you know, which means the parents aren't sleeping either. And often that means that the parents aren't sleeping together. So then you've got it impacting the relationship with their spouse. You know, it can impact.
I remember specifically actually with Bonnie that when she was tiny, you know, we'd take it in turns to sort of lean over her cot and hold her hands down, because she was so, you know, she'd just spend all her time scratching or rubbing her face. Even if she had mittens on, she'd be rubbing her face. And so we just want to hold her hands down, and then finally she'd sort of, you know, move her head around, and then she'd finally go to sleep. And then, you know, one of us would go to sleep, and then an hour later she'd probably wake up and do the same. Then I would like take it in turns, but it just meant your whole, you know, night was so disrupted. And you just wanted to do everything you could to help, but you knew that actually you were also putting yourself in a position where if you weren't sleeping, actually you're just more, everything's harder to manage.
Oh my gosh,
you're more irritable, you're more you know, react more easily to things.
And you're less able to give the care that you want to give ultimately when you get into that space. And also you've got the financial side of things. You know, children don't necessarily have that understanding of the financial impact that their condition can have, but for parents that's an extra toll on their mental health. You know, the clothing, the products, going private because the NHS waiting lists are so long. You know, all of those things. Allergies, sometimes particularly children, they can have a lot of allergies that are tied to their eczema. So parents now it's coming into, what's in the house, what we're feeding them, all these additional pressures that they have to think about. And also it just takes away from their own quality of life. They can't go and do their hobbies. They can't go see loved ones. They can't spend as much time maybe with other children as well that they have, which makes them feel like they're failing. And that can be a huge mental toll, to actually feel like, I'm failing in my role as a caregiver or a mother or a father, whatever it is. That can take a huge mental toll. Whereas actually for the child, you're dealing with also a visible condition. So it opens you up to things like self-esteem issues and bullying at school.
Yeah, totally. And is your experience been more with adults looking after children, or is it also with, adults who have eczema themselves, or is it generally the caregivers?
So I work more with people who have eczema themselves, adults who have skin conditions themselves. But I do also work with adult caregivers. So I only work with people who are 16 and over. So I actually, I have a consultation next week with a 16-year-old boy who has severe eczema. So I do get some of the younger ones coming through, but it's mostly adults, people in their 20s, 30s, people suffering with TSW who have been going through it for a long time and actually didn't even realize the support was out there. And then they find me and they're like, oh my God, someone who I don't need to explain my condition to, So I get a lot of that. People who find me and they're just like, oh, I don't need to explain to this person what it's like. They know. Yeah.
And what other support is out there, for people at the moment,
so
that you're aware of?
Yeah, the support. Not enough.
No.
Not enough. You've got helplines, you've got, National Eczema Society helplines, things out there. You've got 111. The number of times I've called them. I think it depends what stage you're in, because if you're in a point of eczema and you are okay and happy and willing to use steroids, then generally, like, you could go to the hospital, you can go to a walk-in clinic, you can go to the doctors, and they will be able to prescribe you what you need. It's harder with people who are not using steroids or in TSW, because actually there's,
or who don't want to, they don't want to the risk of TSW.
they don't want to risk it. Yeah, absolutely. And either way, it's totally up to people, whatever they want to do. But there is a lot less support out there for people who say, I don't want to use steroids. And I've been told myself, you're refusing medical treatment. I was on the phone to 111, the emergency line, just in an absolute mess, being like, I need help. And they said, we can give you steroids. And I said, I'm not taking them. And they said, well, you're refusing medical help, and we can't do anything for you. But never once during that call did they say, do you need someone to talk to for your mental health? Do you need to be referred to mental health support? I've never been asked on this journey through like the 5 years of me struggling. Never have I been asked by a doctor or a dermatologist, do you need therapy?
Yeah.
Which blows my mind. The self-referral for NHS is out there. And honestly, if you can't afford like private therapy, get on the wait list like now, because it's worth it. It will come round, whether it's 6 months or a year, you will get help in the end. But
and how many other people are there out there like you that you're aware of?
As soon as you start digging into the Instagram community, I mean, so many. We all feel so alone. And then you get onto Instagram and you find this whole community of people just like you. And now I'm in a WhatsApp group with there's about 60 of us in this WhatsApp group, which is fantastic. It doesn't matter what day or time it is, you can message on there and be like, I'm having an awful time, or can someone recommend a bra for me to wear, or whatever it is. And there's someone who can help and understand. So actually, I think the best support out there is the community, is actually finding your people.
Yeah, no, I must admit, when I look back, I think the thing that I found most difficult, or not one of the things I found most difficult, was the loneliness and even though if you had friends and family, it's really hard to explain to them what you're going through, and you just can't. understand it. I don't think it's not fair almost to expect your family and friends to understand it fully
No,
if they haven't been
yeah,
in that situation.
100%. Like my friends were sending me, you know, products and cards and, you know, all these well wishes, which was amazing. And don't get me wrong, that does help.
Yeah.
But they also, they don't know. They can't know. Unless you've been there yourself. Honestly, the impacts that the skin condition has, you know, I lost a career over it. It's not just feeling a bit low. It's actually, this can impact, you know, your diet, your career, your sleep, your relationship, every aspect of your life, you know, travel, who you choose to see and not see. So yeah, that isolation can really set in. Finding people out there and going out and finding support groups just so you don't feel so alone is a huge help.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm conscious that we said we'd try and keep this to 20 minutes, and we're
yeah, I know.
and I'd love to be able to talk for ages. But just, can you give us, just in really quick snapshot, like what is hypnotherapy? Like what actually happens in a session, just really briefly?
Sure. So I do solution focused hypnotherapy. So there's lots of different types of hypnotherapy. That's what I do. It's an hour's session, half an hour of talking, half an hour of a deep relaxing trance. We talk about what's been good. We focus on the positives, increasing serotonin, reducing your cortisol. So we're not going to talk about the problem because your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So talking about all those horrible times that you had with your skin is just taking you back over it again and again. So we instead are going to talk about how your brain works and how you want your life to look like moving forward. So we imagine, you know, okay, imagine the problem wasn't there. You know, what would you be doing differently? What would you be doing more of? What would you be doing less of? And how can we take a tiny step towards that life that you want to live? And then, yeah, going into a deep, relaxing trance. So it's a very positive experience. You've got that goal setting in there and learning about your brain as well, learning about the mind-body connection. I always like to throw some neuroscience in there.
Brilliant. Well, if anyone's interested in specifically in looking at more, then we've got a great blog on our site called A Parent's Guide to Eczema Mental Health, which at the end of it has got some details around Jennifer. But before we have to sort of break off in a few minutes, Jennifer, I sort of thought it'd be useful for if you could give us your top 3 tips, sure. And then I might do the same if we've got time, just for sort of parents and caregivers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, firstly, the support group we've already mentioned, like finding people out there who are going through the same thing you are going through. I think that's got to be a top tip. Prioritizing your sleep, as we've already mentioned, like sleep really does impact everything. So as soon as your sleep starts to go, everything else is going to get harder. So whatever that looks like for you, whether that means taking time off work, you know, or bringing in other people to help, whatever it is, prioritizing your sleep. And I think also just for parents in particular, being more open with how much you're struggling with friends and family and asking them to just flat out whatever you need. Like, can you come over and do some laundry for me? Like, you know, could you come over and help cook dinner? Whatever it is, open up to them and say, this is how hard things are right now. Because actually all that's going to do is help increase awareness of how this situation impacts people. A lot of the time people keep this stuff to themselves, and they'll say, yeah, it's quite hard right now, but they won't actually say how hard it is. So open up and lean on friends and family for support. Tell them what you need, and take that time for yourself. If they can come over and cook dinner so you can have a nap, do that. You know, the more you take care of yourself, better you're going to be able to take care of your loved ones.
No, it's funny actually. I've got some really exactly similar perspective actually on the 3 things I was going to say. Is focus on sleep. Sleep for us was just such a big deal, and it is so amazing how, you know, your skin heals. I think someone told me skin cell renewal is 8 times faster when you're asleep or at night time. So both for the person suffering with eczema, but if you're also caring for someone with eczema, getting decent sleep is just the most critical thing. And for me, the clothing that my child was in, or that I was, you know, that she was wearing, made such a fundamental difference to sort of break that exactly itch sort of scratch cycle. So I have to give a shout out for my sort of God and Comfort brand at Excellent Clothing. But things like washing powder as well, basically, but sleep was number 1. And the second thing was taking care of yourself. it took a really good friend of mine to knock on my door and just say, you look like shit, Joe. Excuse the language. You know, look after yourself, because you're not going to be helping her to really look in the mirror and realize that actually I needed to look after myself as well. And then the final thing I was going to say about kids was something, actually, I can see Katie's on this from Itch and Bitch, and on a great sort of live I did with her, we talked about giving children responsibility and giving them some responsibility to sort of empower them, whether it's putting their own cream on, you know, giving some clothes available that they can put them on themselves. For example, we used to keep a top for Bonnie in the fridge, so if she was really hot and itchy, she could go and help herself to a spare top in the fridge. But also it means that you empower them, but also it gives you a bit of free time, and it makes you feel more confident about putting them in a situation without you, because otherwise they're just going to maintain that dependence on you. And even though we want to wrap our kids up in sort of cotton wool, it's really good to be able to give them some responsibility. So that was
100%. And I relate to what you were saying about your friend knocking on the door and being like, you know, you need help, because actually it was my auntie for me, and she's in Australia, but we were on video cam at one point, and she was like, Jem, you need therapy. I was like, okay.
No, sometimes you need someone to tell you, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes you just need people to flat out tell you, but also
I think it's self-indulgent, but actually you do, you know, you need sometimes to have that little push to make sure you're looking after yourself.
You don't have to wait until crisis point. You know, therapy isn't just for people who are, you know, really struggling and can't cope. It's also just for anyone who wants to improve their resilience, improve their life work balance, whatever it is. You know, you don't have to wait until you're in a desperate place to get help.
Thank you so much. It's been really fantastic talking to you, and I feel like it's gone in a flash.
It really has. I know when you said, oh, we'll aim for 20 minutes, I was like, oh, that's going to be hard, but I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, I hope so. But look, thank you so much, everyone who's been on here. And if you've got any ideas for other talks and lives that you'd like to hear from us, and topics, but also any questions that Jennifer or I can answer, please do let us know, and we'll come back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, DM me any questions as well if you're too shy to like put them in a public forum. And yeah,
brilliant. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Jennifer. Lovely to see you all.
Okay, have a good night.
Okay.
Bye.